The first I would have said is please kindly take your seats. I can get rid of that. A very, very warm welcome to all of you here physically in the Haus der Universität here in Bern, and to everybody joining us virtually to this event, 2 decades of lessons learned in the fight against hunger. It's time to recommit to zero hunger. There is this. Perfect. My name is Antonia Dös, and I'm a senior advisor in evaluation and learning at Helvetas in Zurich, and I have the pleasure of moderating today's event here. As I've already mentioned, we have a virtual audience. We have multiple people that have registered from over 20 countries, so also a very, very warm welcome to you. If the audience here in the room wants to turn around and wave at the camera in the back, we're extending a very warm welcome also to the ones that are joining us and that are interested in this topic. Great to see that you're interested in joining us today. To kick us off, I would like to introduce Regula Ritz for the opening remarks of today's event. Regula Ritz is currently serving as the president of the board of directors of Helvetas, and she looks back on a long political career at municipal, at cantonal and federal levels. And you may know her as a former national councillor and president of the Swiss Green Party. And she's a very committed historian, setting up her own business and increasingly expanding her activities in civil society. Regula, you're very welcome to come to the floor, and we're looking forward to your remarks.
Thank you so much, Antonia. So I have to try to speak in the microphone. I think it works. So, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, dear friends, thank you so much for joining us today, both here in the House of Universität and online. Very welcome here. Well, it's a great pleasure and it's a great honor for me to welcome you to this event on the Global Hunger Index. This is the 20th edition of this index, which is published by Welthungerhilfe and Concern Worldwide, our long-standing partners within the Alliance 2015 network. They work together with the Institute for International Law of Peace and Armed Conflict, and for the first time, Helvetas is also a contributor to the index, together with the Liechtenstein Development Service, LED. I would like to express our sincere thanks to the LED for our partnership in this project and beyond. I would like to have a very warm welcome to Andreas Sieg, who came here from Liechtenstein to Bern. This is really a great honor for us. Thank you that you are here with us. We are all meeting at a moment of great uncertainty. Armed conflicts are multiplying, and the climate crisis is accelerating. We all see it, we all know it. And the will to cooperate is increasingly fading. Public budgets are shrinking, power interests and tariffs dominate the political landscape. And too many people are losing faith that improvements are still possible. I'm sure that we are not among them. I am convinced, and I know that many of you are too, that change is still possible, that progress is still possible. Today, our panelists that are here from different countries, they will share concrete examples with us of how effective action can reduce food insecurity. We are so happy that you are all here. The Global Hunger Index 25 reminds us of the urgency of action. Since 2016, the world has been stagnating in the fight against malnutrition and hunger. And that is a great problem. Today, 42 countries still face serious or alarming levels of hunger. The number of people threatened by famines has doubled in 1 year due to a dangerous mix of armed conflicts, climate shocks, and economic crisis. Behind all these numbers are human lives, families skipping meals, children unable to make their schoolwork and to learn because they are hungry, farmers watching their crops being destroyed by heat or by floods. But the index also tells another story, the story of hope. Take Nepal, which happens to be a country where Helvetas began its mission in the 1950s. supporting mountain farmers to grow food under very difficult conditions. According to the Global Hunger Index, the level of hunger in Nepal has fallen from serious to moderate over the past decade. This happened not by accident. It is the result of concrete action and more importantly of collective action. Action by affected communities, by local governments, by civil society and by international partners working hand in hand. Farmers have adopted improved seeds, small-scale irrigation and new techniques to increase yields. These efforts were often implemented with the cooperation of international actors and supported by the government's agricultural development strategy. Together, they build a foundation for more resilient food systems. At the same time, Nepal's multi-sector plan brought together ministries of agriculture, of education, water and sanitation. It ensured that policies worked not in isolation, but concert. In health, for example, community-based volunteers trained and supported by the public health system reached mothers and children in remote villages with essential services, like providing them with vitamin A supplements. And all of this was made possible by infrastructure. Health has, for example, together with local individuals and governments, has built more than 10,000 railways in the last decade.
Remote areas, does it work? Is it better now? Okay, sorry. I hope that we have. Yeah. I think it was better before. Is it working now? Oh. So it's always the technical things that are a challenge. Is it okay now? Also for you here in the room. Good. So our excuse is that it didn't work maybe so well. But the main thing will be the panel, so this will work, I'm sure. So I just stopped with the 10,000 trail bridges we build in Nepal. And these bridges connect remote communities to markets, but also to schools and to health services. Nepal's stories reminds that change is possible even in difficult times. The Global Hunger Index translates these experiences, we all do, in 3 politic recommendations. Does it work for you? It is a little... Okay. 3 policy recommendations. You know them? It may be. First, this is clear, we need leadership. Leadership that recognizes the right to food is not only an aspiration, but it is a duty, and that holds governments accountable for making it real. Second, we need ownership, local ownership and democratic participation, because transformation endures only when it is led by those who live it. And third, we also need crisis-resilient food systems, systems that protect livelihoods before, during, and after shocks. Here, we, as the development organizations and NGOs, we have an essential role to play to connect local action with global solidarity. Let us hold on that message, because the global context, we all know it, is becoming tougher. Does it work? Okay. International cooperation is under pressure. Some governments are retreating from global commitments. Many countries have reduced their aid budgets. Others are using development assistance as a tool of power and a tool of influence, not of solidarity. Despite these challenges, we must not lose courage. Every one of us working on these fields sees it every day. People who adapt, rebuild, and innovate every single day. Women leading cooperatives that feed entire communities. Young people turning dry soil into fertile land. And local communities making decisions about water, nutrition, and essential services. This happens every day in many, many countries of this world. So, we see that the fight against hunger is not a losing battle. There is enough food to nourish every person on this planet. Hunger is not only about scarcity, it's also about inequality and especially about access. We must bring these facts back into the public awareness. And here, the Global Hunger Index is a very powerful tool. It shows both the progress made and the gaps that remain. And we should never forget, from the first Global Hunger Index in 2000 until 2015, remarkable progresses were achieved. The global score fell by 27%, meaning millions of people were able to overcome hunger in just 15 years. What was possible then is possible again. But the index also reminds us where data is missing. From conflict zones, for example, and fragile states where hunger often remains invisible. And where hunger is invisible, help rarely arrives. So let us take that Global Hunger Index as a call to action. The international community must renew its commitment to achieve zero hunger by 2030. Let us make hunger visible, advocate for fairer politics and budgets, and demonstrate that our work brings real results. We will see it then in the panel. Every investment in reducing hunger is an investment in peace, stability, and human dignity. Let us work for the day when the Global Hunger Index will no longer be needed because every person everywhere has enough to eat. That vision may sound ambitious, but ambition is exactly what we need today, now more than ever. Thank you for your commitment. Thank you for your contribution, and thank you for your support.
Many thanks, Regula, for these introductory remarks and for setting the scene. You have already mentioned we're very happy to have Andreas here with us. Let me introduce you briefly. You're welcome to... If you want to stay seated a bit more, it may be more comfortable. You are the CEO of the Liechtenstein Development Service, LED, and you have more than 2 decades of experience in development and cooperation, including several years in management and executive experience. Andreas is a specialist in agriculture and environment and has been active in a wide range of countries, both in project implementation and in consultancy. And before joining LED in 2021, he was able to shape the Swiss Foundation BioVision as head of the Programs and Partnership Department and including in serving in its executive board. Welcome, Andreas. You're welcome to come to the front, and the microphone is yours.
Thank you very much for the introduction, and thank you very much for the warm welcome. I would also like to welcome the audience from my side and also the online participants. I guess if I ask in this room now, what is LED? Maybe not all people would know what LED is. And if I attend to the audience online, there would be a need also for explanation, most likely where Liechtenstein is. But I refrain from that at this stage. So for those who don't know, it's the LED is the very small bilateral development agency of Liechtenstein. We are somehow under the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, but we're also a private foundation. It's a little bit complicated. The good thing is so far is our budget remains the same. We are active in overall 9 countries, and in the 5 sub-Saharan African countries, we're working in the field of sustainable food systems. We support programs of local, regional, and international partner organizations in these countries, in many cases in programs that are aligned with government priorities. In this respect, we are also supporting 2 major programs by Habitas, one in West Africa and one in Mozambique. Indirectly, we are supporting another one in Tanzania. With the focus on sustainable food systems, our project logic in all our projects is directed to the achievement of the SDG, especially of SDG 2, knowing that our contribution as a small agency will be very, very, very minimal. So we see some progress in individual projects, but we had the hope that other major players join forces with us so that we see consistent progress over the years. Unfortunately now, as we heard before, in the last, since 2016 at least, there was not much progress. 56 countries will miss the SDG targets, the targets of reduction of hunger for 2030. And if we move with the same speed, we will achieve the goals in 2137. As was mentioned before, there was hardly any progress since 2016. But, as Regula also mentioned, there was progress before. Luckily, with the Global Hunger Index, we have data since early 2000. So we see that there was progress on all fronts, more or less, in many countries. And I think looking back at that one, we can draw some lessons that with a sustained and combined effort of all, we can speed up the progress. Maybe not, I'm not as optimistic as Regula that we reach all the goals in 2030, but at least that we can speed up the process. I think Habitas and LED, that's why we came together. We want to keep this lesson present on people's minds and on decision makers' minds. The fight against hunger is in the interest of the global community, but it's also a moral obligation. And with this one, a very warm welcome again from my side. And I wish you an informative presentation now, and then an interesting panel discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Andreas, for these remarks and your support. I imagine you're all very curious now to learn even more about this year's Global Hunger Index. And for that, I have the pleasure to introduce you to Esther Haldiman, the Director of Advisory Services of Helvetas. Esther has worked in international cooperation since 1996, including as country director in several countries in Asia and Latin America for Helvetas. She holds a Master in Science in Agronomy and is a member of Helvetas' Management Board. Esther, the floor is yours.
Thanks also for the intro, and welcome also from my side. Before I give a short presentation on the Global Hunger Index, we have prepared a small quiz for you. So, everybody's already getting ready, taking their phones. So you can either scan in here, or you can take the code up there and go directly into Menticom. And the link we have also sent in the chat for the people who are online. First of all, the first question we have. Very easy one, I hope. How many times has the Global Hunger Index been produced?
So we see 17 people got the response right, so it's been 20 years that this has been produced. Now, a more challenging question maybe. Let us see. Which of these indicators are used in the Global Hunger Index? You can choose more than one. Choose the ones that are used in the Global Hunger Index. So, shall we check the answers? So a lot of you got it right. Child stunting, child wasting, and child mortality are important indicators that are used. Malnutrition, surprisingly not. Surprisingly, I say, because malnutrition is sort of a larger concept, which is including too much intake of calorie and also too less intake of calorie. And actually what is being measured in the Global Hunger Index is undernourishment, which is more specific, only looking into too less intake of calories. And yes, food availability is not something that is looked into in the Global Hunger Index. But in general, of course, most of you got the majority of the indicators right. Yeah. So, going to the report, as Regula already mentioned in the beginning, this Global Hunger Index has been published by Welthungerhilfe, Concern Worldwide, and the Institute for International Law of Peace and Armed Conflict. And it's been published every year since 2006. And that's really quite incredible to have a peer-reviewed report with reliable data from many, many countries and regions over 20 years. I mean, that's quite a result. And like it was also mentioned before, I mean, having such data is so crucial as it is the basis to take action. And what's not being measured, that's not being done. So we should not really underestimate the importance of this report. The report is available online. You can scan it in again, but also maybe you saw when you were coming in, we have some reports lying outside in different languages. Welcome to take them home with you. So since 20 years, we are now measuring hunger. But how is this being done? There are the 4 indicators that we were talking about before. The one about undernourishment, the child stunting, which is actually children too short for their age, which reflects chronic nutrition, the child wasting, which is low weight for height, reflecting acute undernutrition, and then the under 5 child mortality. All these children indicators are for children below 5 years. And I mean, hunger and measuring hunger is quite something complex because it's not only about the quantity of food, but also about the quality of food and how this is utilized. So that is also why this indicator is actually quite multidimensional. And then the calculation of the results, they score on a 100-point scale that reflects the severity of hunger from low to extremely severe. And 0 is the best, no hunger, and 100 is the worst. So each country score is categorized and ranked according to the severity of the hunger situation in the country. And another very interesting point about this report is that it makes use of officially available published data. So it really builds on reports from UN and other multilateral organizations, making the best of available data to be able to produce this Global Hunger Index. And as I think Regula has also mentioned already before, there are, of course, also data gaps where there is sometimes not information available from some countries, so it actually hides what the actual situation of hunger is. And that can be due to conflict, to weak institutions, or also just of the lack of funding. Now, let us have a closer look at the results. On this graph, we see the global hunger scores globally, and also the percentage of undernourished people. And we see the years of 2000, 2008, 2016, and 2025. And as it has already been said, after 2016, it actually has really stagnated. And now in 2025, we have shifted from 19 to 18.3, which is really only a little for the period of 10 years. And what does this mean? It means that across the globe, 673 million people do not have enough to eat. It also means that the target of zero hunger by 2030 is difficult, very difficult to reach. If the world continues the way, and that I think Andreas already said, then 56 countries will not be able to meet this target and will not be under low hunger by 2030. And if we look at the country levels, currently 42 countries, hunger is serious or alarming. So this is the overall global picture. Now, if we go at looking at the regional level, next slide, please. Yeah, perfect. So if we look at Sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia, we see quite some progress since 2000, from alarming to serious. But also we see here that the progress has slowed down since 2016. And in fact, the hunger index has increased in 10 countries over the past 10 years, and the region has the highest undernourishment and child mortality rates. One of the reasons is the changing climate, bringing severe droughts in some places and heavy rainfalls and floods in others. When we look at West Asia and North Africa, hunger remains moderate, but there's also some worrying reversal trends linked to conflict, economic crisis, and climate stress. And the most severe situations we see in Gaza and in Yemen. Moving to Latin America and the Caribbean, East and Southeast Asia, and Europe and Central Asia, we see that the report shows better results and we're really at a low hunger level. However, what is also important to highlight here is these are just regional averages. So we have exceptions, like the Cabo Verde as the first country in sub-Saharan Africa which has reached low hunger. Or we have Haiti in the Latin American and Caribbean group, where it is one of the 5 countries with the highest global hunger index scores. After hearing all these sort of rather worrying trends, there is, as Regula has also already mentioned, progress is possible. And we really see that thanks to political will and leadership, as well as continuous and sustained investment, there is really some interesting progress going on in several countries. Countries worth highlighting are Mozambique, Uganda, Togo, Somalia, and also Rwanda, that have made progress, are demonstrating that positive results are possible, and even during difficult times have been able to do action against hunger. And on the slide, you see actually the figures of Nepal, where you really see a very impressive trend of how the situation has improved over these last 20 years. So now, what is needed for these success stories to continue and to be repeated in other countries? As mentioned before, and I think also Andreas and also Regula have mentioned some of the recommendations that come from the report. The report also provides clear policy recommendations. If we can go to the next slide. This is just a summary of the policy recommendations, and I don't want to go into more detail now on this. I really encourage you to read the report and get more insights. And now I would actually like to take a moment and hear from you what you actually think. What do you deem the most relevant to get back on track for zero hunger? Just mention a word or two Or a small sentence. So we see a lot of political will, political commitment, peace. Yes, conflict is really a key driver of hunger, so very important. Cooperation of the government, zero corruption, money from countries, agroecology, yes, sustainable and climate resilient food systems, equity, conflict resolution, less conflicts. There's a lot of emphasis on conflict and the role it plays in hunger. Yeah. So many things that you are mentioning here are really also included in the recommendations, the policy recommendations that are in the report. And we will also hear more about what can be done and what works from our panel. With this, I would like to hand over back to Antonia.
Thank you so much, Esther, for these glimpses into this year's Global Hunger Index. And thank you very much for your active participation in terms of what would help and what is deemed relevant. I'm moving on to the other side of this stage. And with this, we're coming to the panel discussion. You've heard about it already. It has been praised. I will introduce our distinguished panelists one by one, and you will find out why I will do that later. But I will already ask you to please come to the front and join me here. As you have heard, we will have more time now to go into the details. And I would first like to introduce Shruti. Shruti Patel is a senior lecturer at NADL at ETH in Zurich. And prior to joining NADL, she worked at BioVision Foundation on monitoring and evaluation, and is currently also still serving on its foundation board. And she equally worked on sustainable agriculture and knowledge transfer projects in East Africa. She studied agricultural sciences and development studies in Nottingham and Cambridge, and we're very happy that you're here today, Shruti.
Thank you.
You brought with you a picture of a memory or of a place that for you reminds you as to why you continue to work on this topic of food security and fighting hunger. And we would be very curious to hear as to what this picture means to you and why you brought this particular one.
Okay. So thank you, Antonia, for the introduction and also for the invitation. It's really a pleasure to be here, and I'm really looking forward to the discussions. So my story, begins with this image that you see on the screen. I downloaded it just very recently from Google Maps, and it's actually the street where I grew up in Nairobi, Kenya. And although it looks quite different to what it used to, there are some similarities, and I'll point out a few. So you see banana trees there. There's a papaya tree if you have sharp eyes somewhere in the background. And what's difficult to see as well is some wild greens, lemongrass, mint, colchicea leaves, which actually we used to eat all the time. At least once a week, meals would be drawn heavily from the perimeter of our house, which is, my parents are still there. And on the weekends, we would go up country. I would take in the vast tea plantations, the flower farms. And growing up, it was very clear to me that this was a landscape that could grow food very well. And so I was really puzzled when I came across hungry people all the time on the way to school, on the way back from school. And it's a question that really drove me to study agriculture, to study food security. And that's really also the question I'm still exploring now, right? Why are so many people hungry in a place where there is plenty? So that's, what brought me here.
Thank you so much for sharing, Shruti, and for being here.
Thank you.
I would like to turn to you now, Alessandra. Alessandra Roversi is a Senior Policy Advisor for Health and Food at the Swiss Agency for Development and Cooperation, SDC. And it seems we're holding a little BioVision alumni meeting here because also Alessandra used to work for BioVision on sustainable consumption in Switzerland and agroecological projects in East Africa. She holds a degree in international relations from the Graduate Institute in Geneva and a certificate in migration studies and another master's degree in food culture and communication. It's a pleasure to have you here, Alessandra.
Thanks for the invitation.
You equally brought a picture of a memory or of something that for you symbolizes as to why you are committed to this topic. Why is that?
That's why I understood that food is political, and that because I was studying international relations, and that everything we see, like hunger or poor food or poor functioning food systems, is a choice and nothing is inevitable. And this was a book that I read when I was in my 20s by Carlo Petrini, who's the founder of the slow food movement, where he tells a beautiful story of going to eat peperonata in Piemonte, peperoni quadrati d'asti, and the peperonata is disgusting. And he asks the guy, why the hell is that a bad peperonata? And he says, well, because we don't have pepperoni anymore. They're coming from the Netherlands. And he was like, oh, okay, so what do you grow? And tulip bulbs that I sent to the Netherlands. And, you know, Carlo recounts this with a beautiful story, but I'm like, and all of this is a choice. Why would we grow pepperoni in Piemonte instead of growing the bulbs in Piemonte and the Netherlands, and all of these exchanges, or like the milk from Italy going to become a yogurt in Germany and coming back to become yogurt back in Italy. And all of this is highly political. It's made of a lot of choices. And it's a lot of collective responsibility and not individual choices. And a lot of it, you know, if it's GMO-free, if it's local, if it's organic, all of it is a story of choices, of political engagement, which is what made me feel like I wanted to be part of understanding the system, deciding in the system, and a little bit of, like you, still learning how this system works. And funnily enough, you know what these are? They're anchovies. And you might wonder why anchovies are in Piemonte, or in all of the cuisine in Piemonte, also in the Bagna Cauda, but of course because the Genova harbor would welcome the fishermen, who would then, through Piemonte, go into the northern of Europe with the anchovies. So food is also culture and a lot of history, and I wanted to follow this and understand this and be part of shaping it to make it good, clean, and fair, which is what Slow Food was able to coin very skillfully for everyone. So that's when I started getting interested.
Thank you so much.
You can find, I hope, good peperonata d'asti when you go in Italy.
Thank you so much for these food recommendations and the political and cultural aspects of food, Alessandra. The longest trip probably to Bern was made by you, Agnes. Agnes Mahembe, our program officer for food and nutrition security at Helvetas, Tanzania. Agnes hails specifically from the city of Morogoro in Tanzania, and she holds a postgraduate degree in nutrition science earned from the Sokoine University of Agriculture. And she's got wide experience in community development and agri-nutrition interventions at both national and international levels through working with local civil society organizations as well as international NGOs. It's a pleasure to have you here, Agnes. The picture you brought came here by the internet, and we would be very happy to hear what it symbolizes for you as to why you are so committed to this topic of food security.
Yeah, thank you. Actually, this picture, when I see this picture, I'm always motivated and happy of what I'm always doing. This picture is taken from the southern highland part of the country in Bern, where some of my activities, some of my work is. So part of the work I do is to bring smile to faces of children like this one. Actually, when we speak of global hunger index, when we speak of food insecurity, actually some of us, it's not a story. but something we lived. Actually, this is my own story. I was born in a village in Iringa region in Tanzania, where I studied my primary school, but most of the time, my experience was that going to school without having anything to eat. And the school was about 5 kilometers from where I live. The schools didn't provide lunch for the students, so we had lunch break, where most of us could go running back to our home for lunch. But unfortunately, not all the time we go back home, we could have something to eat. Where most of the time I could go back to school for afternoon sessions without having anything to eat. But I could, on my way, sometimes I could grab some wild fruits, which I can eat and have some energy going back to school. And this, at some times, you find you go back home and probably thinking that I'm hungry and actually I cannot manage going back to school for 5 kilometers. Then I could decide to stay home. And sometimes you just go to school as you are on the way to school, then you meet friends, you eat fruits, then the day is over, you are not going back to school, then you just go back home, and the parent, if could not ask that we were in school, then it's over. So nobody cares that you went back to school or not. Despite all this experience, I was determined to study hard, because I told myself that education is the only solution that could change my story. But this, as I was thinking, actually education will not only the solution to change my story, but also for other children. So this experience shaped who I am now. It inspired me to study human nutrition and dedicate my career to ensure that children, especially those living in rural areas, that they should not have to make a choice between eating and studying. So my dedication is that to support communities, and this is my work till today, that I support communities to improve their food security, so that, and through this, I carry with me these memories, past memories, that actually reminds me that behind every statistic, all the data on global hunger index, actually there is, behind, there is an actual life of a child, of a family, who actually, till this moment, they go to school without anything to eat. So actually, my biggest lesson is that it is the role of every one of us, so that we join hands to ensure that no child, no family is going to bed without anything, without eating anything, especially for this century. Yeah, so this is what I wanted to share. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing, Agnes, and for bringing this very personal story here to this room. Thank you very much indeed. We are now moving on to the discussion bit after you have had a chance to meet our three panelists. And for that, I would like to mention that you're welcome to submit questions that we will take up at a later point during the discussion. You can scan the QR code, or it's also shared in the chat. For any questions very specific to the Global Hunger Index report, we recommend that you pick up one of the copies here outside of the room, or read up in the link of the publication. So really try to focus maybe the questions dedicated to our three panelists. And we have heard quite a bit already now about having to recommit to zero hunger and some of the challenges we face, some of the hopes that are there. And Agnes, I would like to turn to you with the first question of what you think, in your opinion, what is the biggest issue we are facing right now? And maybe also linked to that, what do you think brings the biggest impact when it comes to the fight against hunger?
As I have mentioned before, actually fighting against hunger is everyone's responsibility. To me, from my experience from the field, multi-stakeholders engagement into the fighting against hunger, this is the key, because fighting against hunger is not a responsibility of a single person or a single organization. It is a role of everyone, the government, the private sector, the civil society organizations, but also the NGOs, donors, and everyone in the room. So in order to attain the goal of zero hunger, so everyone should take a responsibility, because the causes of food insecurity is not only about low production or not having enough to eat, but it's all about access, as Madam said, and also the equitable access. How do we find? It's about strengthening the food systems, that we have sustainable production, and also we ensure that everyone have enough to eat. Yeah, that's
so really an engagement of multiple actors, multi-stakeholder engagement, and everybody taking on the responsibility that they have or that they can carry.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Agnes. Shruti, what would you say from in your opinion, from your work? What's the biggest issue we're facing right now, or where do you say do we have the biggest impact in really succeeding in this fight against hunger?
So, I mean, I think I echo Agnes's comments. I think we're facing a very real sort of shortage in funding. It's become super apparent that also for a long time we've relied on a very small number of donors who are funding work, very important work on hunger and nutrition. So I think that donor base needs to be diversified. At the same time, I mean, we've seen that multi-stakeholder action really works. And I think one of the clearest ways that's come through is there's so much progress on this approach of school meals, right? Especially getting multi-stakeholders to contribute to school meal programs that integrate the community, including parents, including NGOs, county governments, et cetera. There's been some amazing work on school meals, so that makes me really hopeful. There's great traction in Kenya. In Haiti, funnily enough, a country that is really suffering from food security, school meals have been very successful because they've been locally sourced. So I think there are places of hope, and multi-stakeholder action is really key as well. Yeah.
And if I may comment on what you were saying, I don't know if you've seen this through the 20 editions of the report, but school meal is a typical social protection measure that has potential national coverage. And actually, unfortunately, there's been studies done for the creation of the Global Alliance Against Hunger and Poverty, this initiative by the Brazilians, G20 last year, to say we need to go back to more social protection, because there's a multiplication of smaller projects. So most of the projects are actually under 1 million. Not only there's shortage of money, but there's actually shortage of big projects. So a lot of micro projects, so a bit of a school meal project here, a bit of a school meal project there, and lack of a country-owned social protection mechanism. For example, school meal owned by for example, Kenyan governments. And then it's a lot of energy for governments to also interact with all of those donors. The report that was published for the Global Alliance says that countries like Nepal have up to 180 different interlocutors for projects in development. You can imagine the transactional cost and the enormous amount of energy that it takes rather than having all of us gather, which is the idea of the Global Alliance. I don't know if it will succeed, but I actually really like the idea of regathering the work of everyone around one thing. And maybe if it's school meal, let it be school meal, right? So let it all, instead of all trying to have our own little project, and a bit of less ego and less logos, we should try to align. Also because, and maybe that is going to be the positive thing of having slightly less funding, because we all have less funding, we should rather try to leverage each other's funding. And in school meals, I think it's an amazing opportunity because a lot of foundations like SIF, Novo Nordisk Foundation, a lot of foundations are really interested to pitch in. Governments, of course, agencies. So I think there's a potential to with the school meal accelerators and other mechanisms to scale this at national level, which I think is, we've been multiplying a lot of small projects rather than joining around strong country-owned measures. And I think we have to probably go back a little bit to reflecting on this.
Thank you so much for this addition. So also a call for collaboration, and even if it's on priority areas, but instead of having dissected smaller projects, but joining forces. Thank you so much, Alessandra. And maybe it's going in that direction already, and we've touched upon the policy recommendations in the report before. I'd like to ask you, Alessandra, in your opinion, what do you think should or could Swiss stakeholders do in this context, and maybe which additional roles can other stakeholders play to have an impact in this context?
Yeah, well, thanks for the question. I think, you mentioned I'm here as a donor, right? But I think what is interesting is as donor, we're not only here for the financing, but also to help shape the normative environment and the policy dialogues. And I think one thing where we could all play a role related to the report is data. You said I read 2008 was your first report was on data, and I think we need to go back to saying how important data and evidence-based decision making is. We are very worried to see the whole information system crumbling down. The DHS, FuseNet, a lot of the systems that are used to measure data are not being funded any longer, or are threatened not to be funded any longer. And I think we need to make sure that we fund data collection, because as you were saying, if it's not measured, it's not tackled, it's not served. And I think maybe we need measures that are slightly less scientific accurate, but cost effective and more efficient, because sometimes we try to be very, very scientifically accurate and it's more expensive and takes more time. And also balancing country ownership with having quick global data comparable that we can act upon. And just on this point, Switzerland was very active last year, over the last 15 months, to make sure that minimum dietary diversity would become a new SDG 2 indicator. And minimum dietary diversity has this interesting spin because it's actually less on quantity of calories, but more on the quality of diets. And it's the first steps towards also not only measuring the sort of caloric intake, which is of course crucial, but the quality of the diet. And just one figure I think we need to realize when we start measuring this is we don't know what healthy diets are yet, and this is still being defined and measured. But in the SOFIA report, which is a report complementary to the report you published, it says 2.6 billion people do not have access to healthy diet. That's 1 person out of 3 in this planet. So of course, this is a global problem. And the cost of a healthy diet is on average $4.46. But you know what the cost of poverty line is? It's below that. So I think healthy diets should become the new poverty line, because if it's $3 and under, there's also a huge question on how we measure what poverty means. And a lot of people in this planet cannot access healthy diet. So also a lot of things to think about beyond hunger.
Yeah, thank you so much, Alessandra. So, like underscoring the importance of data and somewhat recommitting to keeping on measuring and having
primary data.
Exactly.
Yeah, because that's an important point. Keep on measuring, because a lot of people talk about artificial intelligence, but artificial intelligence is not primary data collection.
Yeah.
And it will be as silly in what it delivers as the quality of the data we input, which is going to be a challenge.
Thank you so much. Shruti, what would you say would be important to be done by Swiss stakeholders or also other stakeholders?
I mean, linking to Alexandra's point, maybe on the policy dialogue, right? I think this notion of food sovereignty is really important. It's been highlighted in the report as well. 80% of Africa's basic food stuff comes from outside the continent. And it's something that I feel that we don't talk enough about, right? And you couple that with the fact that the value of food production on the continent is not rising, it's stagnant. It's very difficult to see how we can become more food secure under those structural conditions. And we talk a lot about sustainable value chains, for example, right? We have the cocoa value chain, the coffee value chain, and I think it's not enough just to think about sustainability as, you know, an agricultural practice. It's also not enough to focus on value addition in the country. I mean, it's great, but I think we also need to ask questions about, you know, how is this actually increasing the autonomy and the choice of these countries? I think that's a real issue, and I think it's great that Nepal, a country that has made good progress on it, has also prioritized food sovereignty in its constitution. It's a good example.
Yeah, thank you so much for highlighting this point of food sovereignty and autonomy and having the choice, Shruti. Agnes, what would you say from your perspective from Tanzania? What would be vital in terms of working on policy recommendations from Swiss stakeholders or also other stakeholders and their roles and responsibility?
Yes, looking at countries like Switzerland, which is the developed countries, and linking to where I come from, still I see there is a linkage where there could be some technical exchanges where each country could learn from. But for example, like for now, we have the city-to-city partnership between the city of Zurich and the city of Bern, where the main partnership is not only on funding, but also on knowledge and experience sharing, where we have been sharing experience regarding different topics. You could wonder that there are some topics where the city of Zurich also feel like they would like to learn from these developing cities. So through this, I have a feeling that, of course, there is something to connect when we are speaking of the global hunger, reaching out the zero hunger. Then there is something that should be done, especially in exchanges between these countries, different countries, regardless of the status of the countries. So giving this concrete example, like the way this city-to-city partnership works, especially with the topic of food and nutrition. Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing this very concrete example of the collaboration between Mbeya and the city of Zurich. It seems...
I think the territorial food systems is an excellent point to start, very empowering. Indeed, looking at, well, the famous localization, right? But these smaller local food systems that are a great start as well, but always not the global. So,
yes, sure. Of course, from what I know from my experience, strengthening local food systems, actually it is a way to go and not thinking at the global level because the beneficiaries, the people whom we are speaking, they are at the local level, where farmers, when smallholder farmers take a step towards strengthening agriculture, strengthening production, learning how to work and on the climate change mitigation, then this is the way to go towards strengthening local sustainability and leading to zero hunger. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Yeah, a call for local food systems or increasingly local food systems. Thank you so much. It seems that we have submitted questions that are kindly curated by Michelle and Matthias, diligently working there at the desk. Michelle, you're welcome to ask the one that you've picked out here.
Thanks, Antonia. Indeed, we have several very interesting questions. I'm picking one that stood out to me, but we could have picked also 5 others. It's a question also about stakeholders, and it's about the consumers themselves. So the person is asking, how can consumers in industrialized countries change their behavior to influence food securities in poorer countries? What is your take on this?
Who would like to take this question, or who would like to take it first?
Maybe make
Go
a
ahead,
comment
Shruti.
on that. I think that's a super interesting question. I don't know if that would be the place I would start. I would definitely start with how can industrialized countries help consumers make better choices. And there I think this aspect of food environments is so incredibly important, right? It's basically what are we surrounded by as we go about our day-to-day business, right? It's been shown, there's lots of evidence to show that actually what our actions are very much controlled about just what choices we have in front of us. And already from that starting point, you can kind of begin to see how maybe lower income countries can also benefit from that insight. It's really actively shaping the environment towards more nutritious food, because we know that when the environment is more nutritious, it's almost automatic, right? Consumers just make better choices that way.
And just to build on this, I think consumers everywhere should be involved definitely in the conversations. There's been for many years a lot of gatherings of farmers associations, so the right to food and farmers' rights, and there's a clarity that a collective movement there is needed. Consumers have been very absent from the conversation as groups, and they've been very individualized in their responsibility as sole choosers for their own fate.
Yeah.
And I think a collective movement of consumers is greatly needed, and I've seen fantastic examples of consumers' organization in Africa requesting for less pesticide residues and less antibiotics, requesting for better prices, because a lot of the prices are completely inflated and unjustified by the actual market, but they're basically anti-competitive behaviors from company. So I think there's a huge competition environment to be worked on in Africa, which is a bit of a blind spot for a lot of the development world. But I think competition has to be regulated, and consumers with farmers. Sometimes they're against each other because but together on some aspects. And I think there is a great opportunity for this movement on the right to adequate food, to have civil society organizations such as Consumer join the conversation here and everywhere. So definitely a very good question.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, maybe if I may.
Sure, Agnes, of course.
Yeah, of course, mentioning that consumers, actually, they are key stakeholders when we want to strengthen the food systems. However, of course, what I could recommend is to invest also on consumer awareness, because once consumers are aware of healthy eating, or what is good for them, then always there could be a demand. So if we create a demand for healthy eating, then it is easier. Sometimes it eases on the achievement. So that, because I see like the way you have mentioned about the residues, crop residues, and so forth, unless consumers claims that the food is not safe, then people could adhere to food safety and quality.
Thanks very much for adding this important point, Agnes. We have time for a second question.
Yes, I would say there are so many interesting questions coming in. I would say I hope everyone agrees if we take one more and postpone the apéro a little bit. I picked another very interesting one about food also being an important part. You mentioned it also, Alessandra, an important part of cultural identity. So the person is saying when fighting food insecurity, especially in the humanitarian sector, it's about micronutrients and about quantities, but seldom about cultural appropriate food. Are there initiatives, or maybe just more general, what are your thoughts on this topic?
In humanitarian settings, actually, it's an interesting question. I was talking to a colleague of mine who was almost retired and was working 35 years ago on listing wild foods that people would eat in humanitarian setups. So that's also part of culture, you know, knowing your environments. And actually, funnily enough, he tried to find out if this database was still existing to bring it back to life. So a lot of the things we've done in the past, maybe we should go back to most of your reports, because I think we've actually said and thought about a lot of good things already. So probably a lot of it would be about implementing this. No, definitely there is a great question on when you also fortified food, the color of the food, the taste of the food is really important. And more we become aware that, you know, maybe serving food with a specific smell or color, even though if it's fortified, for example, is not going to be appreciated by people, and how much, again, back to your point, how much agency you give to the person to also choose what they can be eating and not always be sort of the recipient of something that is not so dignifyingly given sometimes. So I think there is a great question on the cultural appropriateness of giving and sharing as well. But definitely it's also an important question, very often disregarded, I have to say, in shorter term emergencies.
I mean, although maybe just to add, I think the positive development has been the World Food Programme like increasingly moving towards cash and voucher-based programming, which is, you know, kind of providing more incentives to the local economy to actually develop food products that are actually wanted and desired by people in those areas. So I think since 2008, there's been some good progress on that front as well, which helps.
Thank you so much. And I'm sure we could carry on for a while already with this discussion, with answering all the questions that have come in. But I would actually like to ask you a last question. We've heard about the challenging bits on this path of the fight against hunger, and it's definitely not an easy one. Maybe asking you first, Agnes, what gives you hope or gives you energy, or where do you draw strength from when things get difficult or when things get tough, or when you have a difficult day and you say, this is really tough? What gives you energy and strength and hope to carry on?
Actually, what gives me strength and energy is to see smiling face like on the picture that I showed before. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this gives me strength is that with a very minimal investment, it is a contribution towards zero hunger. Because you find, what I know, that each contribution from each stakeholder, being improved agriculture tools, being improved seeds, being a government investment, or whichever investment gives me hope that we are contributing towards making a cup full, because each drop adds into making a cup full. So to me, this actually gives me hope that whatever we do now, whatever we invest in now, we are contributing towards zero hunger. It might be not by 2030 as we see the trend. However, still there is hope that we can achieve. Yeah.
Thank you so much. So adding a lot of little drops into a cup.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Agnes. Shruti, what is it for you that gives you strength and energy and hope to carry on when things are a bit more challenging?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's when I get home and I can enjoy a really nice meal, and just reminding myself that that's actually just come from the earth, and people have made it, and the earth is still here, and people are still here, and that's really kind of, all we need. And it's amazing that we get all this delicious food without even asking for it to be tasty. So, yeah.
Thank you so much. Alessandra, what would you say? What is it for you?
I think relationships and the idea that I'm very rarely alone in this fight or ideal or goal and project. So the fact of having extremely motivating other people along who, can pick up the baton when I have a bit of a worse day. So I think it's really the importance of having those relationships and this common struggle together.
So having sparring partners by your side and a common goal. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Shruti, Alessandra, and Agnes, for your time and for your work and for sharing your insights and experiences. As I said, we could have probably continued for a long time, but we will leave it at this for today. Thank you so much. And there will be the apéro after. I will say a bit more about it now, but you're very welcome to sit back down again. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I've asked Shruti, Alessandra, and Agnes this question, and I would like to ask you the same before we close. When things are difficult, and it may not only be related to this topic, but it can be to another one that you're passionate about, that you're working on, or maybe also from your personal life, where do you draw strength and hope from when things get difficult? You see the Menti here again. It's the same as in the beginning. I see people scanning already. That's great. We leave it up for another moment for you to connect. I see a couple of 40 are already connected. That's great. So maybe we can go to the question. You can put in one word or just a sentence. From what do you personally draw strength and hope? We have a people aspect here, dedicated people, nature, success stories. Working in partnership, so also the relationship aspect. Improvement over time. Women's solidarity. Good news, existing projects, your children. Somebody else may have it worse, being close to nature, that people can cultivate. Beef and wine may be very resilient to some of you. Depends on the quantity of the wine, I would imagine. Digital technology, people mentioned again, the raised awareness, resilience. Wonderful. We can leave this open, I think, for a bit more. And I will say a bit more about the logistics of the apéro now. I would like to thank you very, very much for having been here physically today, to everybody who has joined online, for your questions. We are sorry that we were only able to bring up a few. We still hope you found it interesting. As mentioned before, you're very welcome to pick up the English full report of the Global Hunger Index outside. The synopses are available in English, German, and French, so a somewhat shorter version. And I would very much like to invite the physical audience to an apéro that we have on the ground floor, so one floor upstairs. And we invite you warmly to continue on this exchange, to deepen some of the conversations and interactions. And we wish you fruitful, interesting, and inspiring exchanges. Thank you so much for being here, and have a lovely rest of the evening.